Yeah.
But what I wanted to, where I said that we would probably go on to a different discussion, is that someone asked a very big question in the chat. So TOMOCKAKILLINGBIRD says, here's my question for Tia, if we can get to it before the end. Congrats, we are. We can assume you will never know every camera and microphone between you and your destination. Is there a way other than Grey Man clothes? Did we already talk about Grey Man?
Not today.
I didn't. I alluded to it.
Okay,
but
we'll make a tangent for it then.
Yeah.
Is there a way other than Grey Man clothes to act while you know you are being observed without being controlled and limited by it, both practically not getting yourself or others caught, and psychologically not obeying their expectations? So I'll just add on to that. Grey Man is a tactic of dressing like the people around you, basically being the most inconspicuous, not by hiding but by blending in. A lot of people take it to mean a certain kind of look. It's not a certain kind of look. Don't try and look like Jason Bourne. You're trying to look like the people around you. If you're going to the goth club, right, look like a goth. Don't look like Jason Bourne. If you're going to a university campus, right, do dye your hair. Do have your pronoun pin. Don't dress like Jason Bourne. It's not a specific look. It is the most common look for wherever you are and the people who are around you. But yeah, this is a really interesting question, right? It's how do we act when we know we're being watched, which we are, without the knowledge of us being watched, allowing us to, without the knowledge of us being watched, controlling us and stopping us from being able to do anything meaningful.
I mean, that's that, you know, you've managed to live your life up until now being watched pretty much the whole time. So, you know, you don't have to worry about ducking every time you walk into a 7-Eleven, because you're not going to be doing something illegal in that 7-Eleven, right?
Yeah.
Even though you're on camera and you're right next to a ruler that'll say exactly how tall you are, right? So the what's important is that you know, you're keeping track of these identity and selection issues where that will make it easier for the cops to tell who you are, what you're doing, why you're doing those things, and connect it to the previous the beginning and or what you've done before and what you do after, and create a narrative out of that, right? And so when you know, when the investigators come in and try to determine who is who, you know, every single camera that they have to go and you know, okay, well, you were in front of this storefront for 5 minutes. Now they have to go and see, you know, either to the next storefront, find the next camera, etc. You know, this is time of theirs that you're wasting, and the, you know, and so if you're not doing a crime, if what you're doing is not related to a crime, not related to a protest, don't even worry about it. Just you know, be you at the level of security that you've determined is okay for a normal day. And if you're going to a protest, like, you know, do the things that make you secure, like preparing for the protest, going to the protest, helping people out at the protest, and then coming home from the protest, and etc. And like, you know, don't be looking at other people and seeing how they're messed up, be or like trying to kick somebody out of the protest, like, hey, like, you're, you know, whatever, you know, you're doing things wrong. Because one of the things that it comes down to is that, like, they are endangering themselves, they're skylining themselves.
Yeah.
And that's taking heat off of other people. You know, you can only have a gray man if there is an average. If every single person is in black, then it's going to be completely random who gets selected for violence, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there was also the case fairly recently in one of the Portland street battles where on the Antifa side, someone was taking pictures, and then a whole bunch of people gave them shit and, like, I think took their phone off them. But in doing this, all of the other people started filming that person on their phones. And it's just like, see how this self-policing and, you know, policing of others can just lead to just a much worse outcome, really. I was saying this the other day on Nicole's stream where we were talking about surveillance, but I do think that it's really important for if the online left, right, as creators, if there's one thing that we keep coming back to, surveillance should really be it, because this question about how you act when you're being watched is a really fundamental one to what we're talking about, right? And we should, as people who, by definition, have eyes on us, I'm, as in you, the audience, to be clear. I'm not just I don't just mean one special friend. I mean, yeah, you, the audience, are watching us. We should talk openly and as often as possible about the behavior that it is okay to be observed doing, and the systems that observe us, and what they do with that information. Because having that conversation publicly enables us to establish it's information theory stuff, right? Like, it establishes a common ground where we all know how much baseline information everybody, including maybe actors who are opposed to our efforts, have. We all know everyone has this information, and knowing that everyone has that information is information itself that we can use to make decisions based off of. I am gonna go pee.
Good job. Great job.
I was
right.
I'm going to read a comment from someone who's been saying all sorts of weird stuff, but one comment of theirs landed, and before they said the second part, which made it not land. But the first part is, well, as children, we are all used to pretending that we were being watched, or at least I think the comment is like, as children, we have to assume that we're being watched, I guess. Because it's true, because our parents are watching us, and then our Santa Claus is watching us, or if you're raised religious,
literally has a camera in it.
Yeah, or that, exactly. And so I think we touched on this in the conversation that Sophie and I had on surveillance. And by the way, I put the link in the chat if anyone wants to see, because we've referenced it a few times. It was a really great conversation. It's on my YouTube, so it's in the chat right there. I'll post it again. But it's really interesting how we have been groomed from early on to be ready to be surveilled at all times, and also to be suspicious of people who don't want to be surveilled at all times. Yeah. And it's kind of remarkable when you do think about it for a moment, of how much of our upbringing has been this like grooming, yeah, very panopticon shit. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so semi good comment from the chatter, who then ruined it with the next one. But you know what? I still want to give him credit.
You saying that it starts in our children and all of this lets me be incredibly on brand, and I get to do it while Sophie is away. But David Graeber talks about this.
Oh no! Oh no! Another Graeber fan.
Based Graeber.
Honestly, Graeber is great. Sophie talks about him all the time. It's great.
My Twitter handle is still David Graeber Stan account. So yes.
Really?
Yes.
That's awesome.
So the big thing is that, like, not just the panopticon and the assumption of surveillance, where you can never know that your boss isn't over your shoulder, or your superior officer, or a cop, or whatever, right? But full on that our ability to like conceptualize boundaries and consent and autonomy are messed with this exact same parental model, like Engels talks about as well, that it's all based on, like, in the white Western model, that it's all based on the relationship that parents have to children, or that adults have to children under their care at all, and that it every time that you had homework and you did the homework, that's unpaid overtime, or work that you're taking home, right? So that exact sort of example, but for basically every overreach that authority does against us. But go ahead.
Don't be telling our chat that homework is unpaid overtime.
It is,
because
to be fair, they're unpaid interns already. So
yeah, no, actually, they're not even unpaid. They pay me. So they pay me. They pay me as money for a subscription, and now they're doing labor. So I really, y'all are
and
a
yet
bunch
you
of
call
dummies.
Yourself a communist. Jeez. Oh,
I know, that's like, it's hilarious. This grift is hilarious. Great. What you're saying reminds me of, and I wish Tim was here to speak to the like, at least like his indigenous perspective on it, because I wonder what the indigenous I mean, obviously it's not the indigenous, but there are some commonalities amongst indigenous people, like in their culture, and I want to know like and have an indigenous perspective on surveillance as it applies to their culture. Like, what does that look like? Is there surveillance at all? Like, it's really hard for me to
doubt. Yeah,
it's really hard for me to imagine a society that isn't like always suspicious and like, you know, it's hard for me to imagine any other type of society. And I don't mean that in like a way that's trying to say that it's impossible. I'm saying that because I think I'm just so extremely completely pilled in a really bad way that like when I was growing up, my mom was very big on surveying me, I guess. She like took the door off my room to always keep an eye on me. We had like one phone that was like, you know, it was a landline, so you could always just sit there and listen to conversations. Like there was a lot of stuff. And I remember seeing this video on Twitter where it was, I don't know, it got kind of wrecked by like people like shitting on it, but it was this police state like precinct Twitter, and they were showing how you can search your child's room, and like a way to like, I don't know if any of you all caught that like a few months ago, but it was this cop just showing how to properly search your child's room, and he's like, first you do this and you do that, and it was so many parents were like, oh, thank you so much, and the rest of us were like, what the hell is your problem? But it's so gross how it's like so many of us, that's the type of environments we were raised in, and we were never given any other we could never think anything otherwise, because if we were like, hey, we don't like this, then it's, well, what do you have to hide?
When I was a kid, I was so naughty at school, just for no reason really. I think it's probably because I've
I just stole a lot, was all.
Yeah. I did a bunch of terrible things. I flushed like a kid's Game Boy Advance down the toilet for no reason. Yeah. I was a real piece of shit.
Absolutely criminal.
I feel basically I feel like it's because of ADHD or whatever. But I had to like, don't laugh at that in the chat. It's not funny. That's a terrible thing to do.
We call it ODD when you're being vindictive about it.
Right, exactly. But it's yeah. So they couldn't fucking control me at school, which is just really embarrassing. So they had to make my mom come in on breaks to like watch me, basically. So that's like a whole other fucking thing as well. It's crazy, like
the origin story.
Yeah. Well, I just thought it related to what Bunny was on about, because it is we just get like absolutely surveilled to fuck from the moment that we're born. And, you know, for me, yeah, fair enough. I did do a lot of naughty shit, but that's like another failure of the state. I think it's because I had undiagnosed ADHD. You know, I was going through like a move from like my childhood home to like another city and stuff. Mm-hmm. And they just didn't, you know, again, like sort of failure to look at these things that are like affecting a kid in that way. And they're just like, no, instead, just like watch what he's doing all the time. Never take your eyes off him. You know, yeah, I was a bit naughty in it, three-head, yeah.
I mean, this is exactly what a state whose entire way of life and system requires people to be doing busy work all the time, how they will respond to this kind of thing, because they've necessarily given the teacher, like, you know, the teacher isn't enough on their own to monitor all these kids and take care of all these kids. And so one kid is acting up, so they need to dedicate someone else's time and man hours, right? Rather than in a society where people are available to like take care of kids in a, you know, in any kind of reasonable way. If we I don't want to, you know, be for whitos sitting around talking about indigenous issues, but to talk about that issue of, you know, in indigenous societies, like Graeber also talks a lot about indigenous societies, so everyone can drink again. I'm in the Tira and I are both in the Graeber cult, but you know, there's one account from I think it's Dutch settlers in America from very early on in colonization that Graeber talks about in The Dawn of Everything, where at one point the Native Americans are described with the phrase, "No one is of more consequence than anybody else." And in more detail, they say that the chief is a role that exists, but the chief can't make people do things unless he convinces them it's a good idea. Like, nobody's going to do it unless they agree it's a good idea to do it. And you know, it's like that, right? Like the differences in societies. Like if you're in a society, if you live in a society, you know, what does that mean? It means that like when you are told to act ways that are apparently the laws, either literal, legal, judicial system laws of your society, or they're the sort of social norms, then you're going to do it because you know that there's going to be someone kind of backing up that. Like, not acting that way leads to someone eventually doing something to you, basically. Whereas if you live in a kind of society where no one is of more consequence than anybody else, when you got the whito off the boat coming and saying you have to pay taxes to the king or something, and you're like, I don't know what any of those words are and I don't care, plus L plus your white ratio, get out of my country, then you hopefully have enough people backing you up who are your family, your community. So I guess it's an interesting thing, and this is exactly, like I say, not looking to be for white people getting into indigenous discourse too much, but this is what I mean about like online leftist content creators highlighting the behavior that is acceptable while being watched and pushing it, because there is behavior that is legal, but when you're being observed, people avoid doing it. There is behavior that people feel is morally right, but they won't do it, and part of that has to do with being observed, right? And I think that we can push things in a direction which will allow other people who are not us to engage in serious organizing. And again, this is why I have been bringing up Mastodon, because if people are in a big space altogether, even if that space is being generally surveilled by the state, but it's a space that has an overwhelming political skew, and it's a community, and we're all in community with one another, as opposed to Twitter, where everyone's acting like cops to each other all the time, then you're existing within a bubble of left culture, which I think is cool. That would be neat, and it would do the thing I'm talking about pushing what's the acceptable behavior to do while you're being watched, basically.
I've got two things that I want to say. Remember that the acceptable behavior while you're being watched might radically change based off of who is doing the watching and who is getting watched.
Yep.
Because no amount of legal observers showing up to protests to make sure that cops aren't doing violence, illegal violence, has stopped cops from doing illegal violence.
Yes.
And speaking of legal observers, try to actually reach out to some in your local area, or the programs, or the people in other areas who can help you start your own program, because you don't have to be a lawyer or anything to do it. You just have to go through the training and know what you're doing, etc. It's very and it's very good information to help people know their rights, to help and all of that. And then the second one is, to get back to the other point that I was making about the observation, is a lot of this is not just to protect yourself, but to protect the people around you. So if you think that it's okay and safe enough for you to do, you really shouldn't be making that choice for other people. I really
no, that is true. That is true. Yeah. But that's what I mean about a space that does that pushing.
Yes.
Rather than individuals who are trying to do that pushing, because actually you're exactly right that if I were to start going, I'm going to do this thing and this thing and this thing to show that it's okay to do those things, people who are watching me can't necessarily do those things. A really good example of this actually would be Ai Weiwei, who has been a big focus of the authoritarian surveillance state of China. Like a lot of his work has been to do with government interference in people's lives, and the state has persecuted him a bunch of times. But at the same time, Zizek comments on this, right? Upholding someone who's being persecuted shows what they're essentially showing as an acceptable way to be. Like, they're still using him at the same time that he is getting away with stuff or whatever. They're still using him to show their citizens, he did those things and we chucked him in jail. But because we're telling you about those things, I don't know if Ai Weiwei has ever been to jail, but he's certainly been scrutinized a hell of a lot. And because we're telling you that those things exist at all, then you're then you're aware that you could do those things. And I think Zizek compares this to like boys will be boys, right? It's like talking about horrible things that men do in relation to young boys isn't telling them don't do those things. It's telling them those are things you could do.
Mm.
So like a good example of this would be that realizing that you're actually not a boy but a girl, and then transing your gender isn't a thing that young boys are told that they could do, whether it's assigned good or bad, right? It isn't a thing that they're told that they could do. And so loads and loads of people struggle to do that entirely life affirming and necessary thing. By contrast, loads and loads of young boys are told that like men are violent and that this is a bad thing, don't do it, but it's still being told to them. And so that's the kind of thing I'm talking about with this kind of information theory, like what is actually being said, whether it's being said and condemned or not, it's still being said.
It kind of reminds me of like mass shooters. Even if they are arrested or if they, however it's resolved, there will be probably copycats, or there's a risk of copycats because the idea is out there, even if it's like it's already been publicized to such an extent that now like the idea is in someone's brain. I know it's a lot more to it than that, but like I think there's probably an element of it.
Show or name mass shooters, because it's not just about idolization, right? Like they are still trying to, like, while acknowledging that something did happen, the press are trying to limit how much they talk about something. It was very interesting, for example, to see Bernie Sanders be completely ignored for several significant periods of campaign, because it was like the press made such a big deal about Trump gaining popularity and then winning, and everyone was screaming at them the whole time, just don't report on the guy. Just don't report on every tweet he makes, everything he says, every scandal he's involved with, because you're giving him more attention. And then when Bernie Sanders was saying we should have Medicare for all, we should make these non-reformist reforms, we should change the system, suddenly the press goes quiet. And that's a very interesting thing, right? It shows that they actually are aware of the game that they're playing and are completely capable of coordinating in that game to talk about or not talk about something when they want to, when it actually, when it's actually challenging to them. But I have a probably final topic for us to talk about, which is I don't know, would it be fair to call this counter surveillance? So several people I know are involved with cop watch networks. And again, this is going to be something that's super jurisdiction local stuff to talk about, but like if we're going to talk about surveillance, one thing to talk about is, I know we kind of wandered off from OPSEC and onto surveillance, and they're not quite the same topic, but they're close. But I'm interested in the notion of people basically seeing what cops are up to, seeing where the state is. Like we have to consider as well our own OODA loop, right? And we have to consider that we should be observing like them and seeing what they're up to. Tia, do you have thoughts on cop watch stuff? I don't know if it has different names, or if you've heard of it before. In the UK, it certainly is called cop watch networks.
I do not have any insights onto their operations, but like I think that it's generally like a necessary thing. Like even if I believed that the police were in some way good or whatever, I would still think that an external oversight body which keeps track of and publicizes their behavior patterns would be a good thing. So like in all cases, I think that it's necessary.
Right, exactly. If it was illegal to watch the cops and report on what they're doing and where they are and so on, you're necessarily admitting that you as the state are completely unaccountable to the people.
Yes.
Yeah, and so this is why I say check your local jurisdiction, but it is a really interesting thing to consider. That again, what should be hopefully is for everybody a completely legal activity, right? To monitor the police and see where they are and where they're at and what's going on with them.
Record their behavior when they're physically near you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't we also have ability to like listen to their radio or whatever? Like I know
Some people do
there's
do that.
I know that's like at least in Seattle, I think I got an app and it was just like very easy to like listen to what the cops say. I'm not really sure how comprehensive that is. Like, is it all the conversation or is it like official? Like, I don't know. I have no idea.
Well, so this would be a good example of their OPSEC, wouldn't it? Right? If you're listening to the completely accessible wavelengths on which cops broadcast their coordination stuff, right? You're hearing them firstly speak in code, right? Most cops use
That's
signals
a
and call signs,
399er.
right?
Like
Which you have to learn in order to understand. So we've already covered that. Then there's what information is going out, and when, and that's something that will be considered and coordinated by the department, right? And it's, I mean, to some degree, maybe you could learn, maybe you could learn something from that. I don't. Again, I'm not. I don't have nearly as much experience as Tia does, so like, I don't want to talk out of my ass, but like, it still is an example of OPSEC because they know that anyone could be listening in. We there are a bajillion movies where like, the evil serial killer terrorist or whatever is in the middle of doing his master crime to snare the Batman or whatever, and has the cop radio playing while he's doing it. And it's like, so, well, the cops are aware that people could be doing that if they were doing a crime. And so don't say on the radio, we're on the way to the warehouse to catch the Riddler right now.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Bake Out, for the 2-month resub. I really appreciate that. Thank you. And Pinklin, thanks for giving us up to 5i5. I appreciate, or 5 eyes. Thank you, Pinklin.
Oh, it's the 5 eyes. Oh,
5
shit.
eyes, yeah. Somebody, let's see here. Goblin Hugger says, I did that shit all the time when I lived in Orlando. It was real fun doing ice spotting and outing their locations before they could enter places.
Based.
Huh.
That's wild.
Yeah. Like it's not illegal to talk about, like, in I don't think in the United States it's legal. I do not think that in the United States it is illegal. So I think it is legal to just tell people the location and numbers of the police when you have spotted them,
Yeah, I mean, the police wear numbers and drive cars with license plates because we're supposed to be able to hold them to account for their actions, right?
Yes.
Obviously, loads of cops tape up their numbers and cover their numbers when they're being filmed and all this kind of stuff. But, like, hypothetically, it should be the completely squeaky clean legal thing to do, to get together with some pals and be like, this cop officer number 1104-2069 was here doing this thing today. That's like, because they should be accountable to us. Otherwise you're in a tyrannical police state.
And those are, it could be either one. Who knows which?
Yeah, well, who knows? It could be. It's a mystery. Yeah, it's a no-knock raids and stop and search. Yeah, I mean, it would be really bad to live in a tyrannical police state.
Yeah,
that would suck. Anyway, anybody else? Any comments on stuff?
I'm looking to the chat to see if they have any questions.
Okay, I'll have a scroll through.
I've done so much learning today. Thank you so much, Tia.
Yeah, I have nothing to offer. I just have dumb questions.
I feel useless on most Red Planet episodes, but like this one especially, I feel like, oh my god, I have no idea.
When I was preparing for the organizing interview that we did, and then for this again, and making sure that I was like all up to date, I'm just like, oh, this is all mundane, boring things that anyone could figure out, right? That everybody knows. Like, what? Like, why am I even like? I guess I could just be the mouthpiece for this episode, and just then like, and then now,
I feel like in both cases, I've been like nodding along with the stuff you're saying, and I can tell that that's exactly what you're thinking, is that this is just standard stuff. And I'm like, I know a lot of the stuff you're already saying, but I know that everybody else is like, what the fuck?
Yeah, this is very dense.
Muel, you take notes when we're doing episodes, right?
I've taken a bunch of notes.
I mean, while I'm scrolling around looking for questions, what is there stuff you're particularly struck by? You want to chat over again?
No, I think it's all really, really like it's okay. So obviously, I'm being a bit self-deprecating. Like I've heard of like some of this stuff, but in terms of like what, like applying it to situations is where I've struggled before, and like what situations you would apply it to. But of course, like, you know, just asking a few questions to Tyr, then like you said, Tyr, like, you know, earlier when I was asking about, like, you know, when is it right to do OPSEC, when is it right to do InfoSec? Like, of course, if it's like a protest that's legal, then like, you don't need to worry about it. But then, you know, it's easily communicated that, of course, like, you know, if it's someone that is absolutely vital to a movement for whatever reason, you know, whether it's their skill or whether it's that they're like a public figure or whatever, yeah, you know, you want to protect them, kind of thing. So, you know, don't, and you know, the example that you gave about the renters union and stuff, like, that makes sense. And yeah, just
like,
it's I think it's something that we could, like, you know, definitely, like, what I'm learning about here is I'm gonna start to you know, put this stuff into sort of, like, you know, my life in general, because someone said it in the chat earlier, even if you're not planning on doing anything illegal or something that the state might not want you to monitor them for, just doing OPSEC and InfoSec anyway is going to make their life harder in finding that stuff out anyway, right? Do you know what I mean? So if, of course, like, you know, you might support things that, you know, while we don't condone them here on Red Planet, if you're going to support those things, it makes sense to just do that, right? You know what I mean? And you could see why more and more people would just end up doing that as a result of, like, you know, what the state are doing, and how they're treating us.
Chicago ZZ42 in chat said earlier about using map points to practice good OPSEC, and then they've explained what they meant by that. So I'm going to just read out that message. Map points works like this. You have a meeting location you want to mask, so you wait until the day of the meeting and publicly release an address to a second location. People will go there and get directions to the place. You can add more map points to make things harder to find at each point. The person there can also kind of feel the vibe of the people who come to ask for directions and can give fake locations to go to if they don't feel right, that's an interesting tactic. Yeah.
One of the protests I went to did that, where you came to the first place and everybody kind of stood around being like, well, who's in charge? What are we waiting for? Etc. And then somebody's like, hey, actually, we're meeting over there and we have to walk over there now. So
nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Any questions from chat before we wrap up? Also, Tia, think of a homework to set the chat very quickly.
While you were gone, I started an anti-homework insurrection. So
I heard it.
Yeah,
it's not allowed. We're gonna force you to comply with our authoritarian homework regime now. You thought you could be an anti-homework rebel.
Your
and
homework
instead
is to become ungovernable.
That's actually really good. That's actually really good homework.
Well, I mean, you know, but is there a genuine real good question? Because actually, the chat do actually love getting homework. They're mad at us if we don't have stuff to give them. Is there like simple small stuff that people could start doing to practice being a bit safer in how they communicate about stuff?
Maybe not the specifically communicating thing, but in their accounts and whatever. Google, like, just choose a random account, Google or search whatever internet search you want, and this is just open source, no surveillance, no, you know, special magical fucking cinematic enhance fucking tools shit, right? Just regular old-fashioned Google. Choose one of your accounts with a username, Google that username, and see if you can find it from open source, just from Google. Then open it up into that account's whatever you find into an incognito window, so you see what somebody who isn't logged in sees, and find out all of the information that account will give you, and then just keep going and seeing how far any of your accounts will chain. That's your homework. Understand how
that's very good.
Deep analysis can punch it.
That is good.
That's very, very good. Let's reiterate that in a minute, because I think chat will need that in really good and straightforward terms. But this has actually reminded me of another thing we can discuss before we wrap up. I actually mentioned this in the organizing interview as well. If people don't know, Tia was on organizing interviews where we talk about the very same stuff, but in only an hour. So not as much stuff, but yeah, like hit the important points in an hour. And we talked about one of the things that I mentioned is that Tia has done this exact thing for me before. checking out how much of my personal information can be found. And you kept on referencing open source just now, because the thing that I'm bringing it up because the thing that I want to discuss before we wrap up is OSINT. Because I feel like we should just touch on that at some a little bit, right?
Exploiting open source intelligence is what made Robert. I'm almost there. Fill it in for me. Evans, Robert Evans.
Robert Evans. Yeah.
What actually put him on the map in the first place? Like his whole like area of expertise is like being a journalist and going through and learning to do intelligence analysis on just things that are available on the internet, just because the internet's a place where basically everything's just already available. You know, when you make a tweet, you can't hide the tweet. When you write on Facebook, it's very difficult to like actually hide that from somebody.
Actually, yeah, Garrison from who works with Robert Evans on It Could Happen Here found Rittenhouse. When Rittenhouse killed those people, Garrison found, like, ID'd him because using OSINT. So to back up and let everybody else in on the conversation we're having, OSINT is open source intelligence. And so when we're talking about open source, right, as opposed to sources that are not open to everybody, right? So sources of information that are open to everybody, like well, like when I'm saying that, your mind might go to something like Wikipedia, which is both open source in the fact that it can be edited by everybody, and open source in the fact that it's available to everybody, but it's not that kind of information, right? It's not like encyclopedic kind of biographies of stuff. Social media is the kind of thing we're talking about here, right? When you post online, it is everywhere. It is available to everyone. And even if you've deleted them, in many cases, it can be archived. And so, like, this OSINT, open source intelligence, is like a huge thing that anti-fascist researchers in the modern age are into. Like, and part of it is like people go through the social medias of people who are engaging in horrible fascist stuff and just archive all of it obsessively, just like putting everything down because you actually don't know what will be useful later. And then there's the other part of it, the analysis, where people are going through and looking and trying to figure out who people are when something horrible happens. Actually, I think it's one of the most recent episodes of It Could Happen Here. They did another one on OSINT. So if people want to go and listen and hear in a lot more detail what I'm talking about, check out the episode Zip Tie Guy, a case study for OSINT, where they talk through the guy with the zip ties from January 6th. The guy with all the zip ties who was very clearly planning to murder some people, how he was identified. It's a pretty interesting window into OSINT if you're interested in it. And I think we'll probably talk about OSINT a bunch more when M comes on to talk to us about cult research. But this practice you're describing for the homework, chat, I promise I'm explaining this for a reason, because this is stuff we're going to ask you to be doing. The practice that you're describing for the homework is basically doing OSINT to yourself and seeing what will be available to someone who doesn't have any kind of, state surveillance powers, someone who is just a stalker or a fascist or whatever, who's just looking around, what details that they could find out about you.
That's all good stuff.
And it's about, and obviously it's also about what you choose to have public. So, for instance, again, I am a content creator. I'm not involved in any organizing to like go and break the law or whatever. And so, if I were, that would be really stupid of me, because my face and my full name are just everywhere. And so it'd be really, really quick for anybody to be able to ID me if I did something like that. Whereas other people, if you've chosen to, other people who've chosen to keep that information private because, you have that standard of privacy for yourself that I don't have, because your brain is good. You should check out and make sure that people can't just find your face and name if you don't want your face and name out on the internet. Basically.
Can I say something too? And I hope this is, let me know if I'm not correct, but please don't go to public figures and then do this and then go message them. Here's all the information I was able to get on you, just so you know this is available. People have done
that's
this
creep
to me.
shit.
People
That's
do this to
creep shit.
content creators. It's very creepy. And thank you for your help, but honestly, please don't do that.
I should clarify, when I said Tia did this to me, I asked her to make sure I couldn't be doxxed easily. She didn't just message me and be like, so this is your dad's driving license or something. But yeah, the practice of doing this to yourself, and if you do it for a friend or whatever, is pretty useful, because you are making your communication more safe that way. So
it's like when banks get hackers to try and hack their systems, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Similar thing, yeah.
Yeah, but on a much more kind of, amateur and like, amateur is a kind of considered a bit of a derogatory way, but like, accessible to everyone, a sort of layman's level.
How do you spell it? When you say
OSINT?
Open,
because it's open source intelligence.
Got it. And it's pronounced OSINT?
I say OSINT, but I don't know if...
Okay.
I say OSINT too.
OSINT,
okay.
OSINT.
Not to be confused with ASINT, acoustic intelligence, which is
so the homework
stuff.
Okay.
Okay, what? No, hang on. This is purely a derail, but what is acoustic intelligence?
It's for sonar.
Sonar?
Like the base of intelligence for how we interpret sonar.
Uh-huh. Nice. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, Sophie.
Like
sonar.
Obviously.
Earlier, you just a correction. Earlier, you were talking about how cops have their frequencies that you can kind of tap into and listen to, and it's not illegal to do that. But you called that an OPSEC issue, but it's technically a ComSec issue, a communication security issue.
I'm getting so owned at the end of this episode.
Honestly, thank you for clarifying. I didn't want to say anything, but.
Yeah, I knew that too. Yeah,
So does chat understand now what we're asking you to do? Because now, okay, hang on a second. Chat, 1's if you understand what the general gist is of what you're about to be asked to do, and 0 if you still aren't really getting it. Because if you are all getting it, then I'm going to get Tia to give you some specific instructions for your homework. Bunch of ones.
The simple takeaway is just find out how many of your accounts can get connected to other accounts, and then do what you want with that information.
Yeah.
Google yourself. Yeah.
Chatters have a lot of experience.
It looks like everybody gets it.
Googling themselves.
Everybody seems very excited to Google themselves. Yes.
Okay. Looks like everybody gets it. So let's check up on. Let's check up on last week's homework, which I don't expect many people did, because it was going outside, touching grass, big, scary, oh no, anxiety homework. Don't worry, chat, that's okay. But then Tia, hopefully you can give some handy instructions. That'll be the everybody's got to take notes moment. So chat, last week, because we were talking about squatting and community and locality and neighbors and stuff, we said that you should go meet your neighbors. Did you?
Let's do something different.
Chat?
Let's do smiley faces this time. So like creepy dead-eye smiley faces that are default. Smiley face in the chat if you went out and you talked to a neighbor. You met a neighbor. And if you want, sad faces if you didn't. Now, you don't have to do a sad face, but some of you like to participate. So sad face if you didn't. Happy. Okay. Pixel cooker. Now you're just bragging.
We've got a few.
Yeah, I'm actually really impressed, chat.
Like I say, it's a big, scary, go outside, touch grass, anxiety, oh no, homework.
My neighbors are snobby libs. That can happen. And like we said before, if you meet a crappy neighbor, please don't let that be a reason why you never meet your neighbors in the future. Crappy people exist. Don't. Okay, just it's a thing. Wow,
they're going to be there even if you don't know.
I'm genuinely impressed. I
am
completely sincerely mean it. Chat, I did not expect this good of a response. Yeah, good job, everybody.
Wow, okay.
Loads of people did it. That's cool. I didn't. I didn't do the homework this week. I mean, to be fair, I already know my neighbors, but I want to go meet like way more of the neighbors around.
I will say that I made a huge mistake I know most of my neighbors already. So I didn't need to do this homework, but I made a huge mistake. I was coming back from the gym. I went to the gym one day and I saw that there were some people in my building that I didn't recognize, and they were moving stuff into the building, and I thought, oh, well, they're movers inners, and they're not wearing masks. So I was very mad at that they came into my place and they weren't wearing masks. So I had my sort of like, don't fucking look at me, otherwise I'll tear your face off, face on. And that was bad. That was bad of me, because it turns out they're my new neighbors.
No.
And so yeah, I made a huge mistake.
Muel has delayed socialism for decades by being mad.
I'm sorry, gang. I'm sorry, gang.
It'll never happen now.
Yeah.
All right. So, chat, get ready to take some notes. Tira's going to give you really good instructions on how to OSINT yourself.
Choose whichever of your accounts is the one that you feel most associated with your radical activity. So whether that's going to be your Discord, your Twitter, your something else, go into Google and that service and look yourself up on both of those services. Then, since you will undoubtedly find yourself on the page associated with that identity, put down every bit of information that is on that page that could hypothetically be on another page. Your birthday, that can be on 2 different pages. Your location, that can be in 2 places. The picture, the name, if they have a human name associated with it, the kind of things that they talk about in any bio line that they've made, and then if you need to, you can go back into their that that selector's posting history, and but by this point you can start searching for other terms. You can see if sections of your name without year identifiers or like with different spacing sections will come up with identities on other platforms, and see how many times you can hop out from that initial place to other identities that you have accurately and successfully, and the amount of things that you've left behind for a stalker, for somebody who wants to make your life bad, for them to find. And yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Phenomenal.
Nice. That's good homework. And that's one that you can all do at home, at your little computer with Blanky, with hot drink.
Yeah.
We've successfully countered last week's big scary homework with a nice indoor, in the dark
scary homework.
Yeah.
That's right. You can be comfy.
Yeah, scary in a different way, but in the way that chat loves. Cool. I guess actually I did see one more thing, so I just want to scroll up to it. Shit. Somebody said, oh no, it's disappeared. Oh, this is terrible. I shouldn't have let it go.
Everyone repeat your old chat messages now.
Do you remember who it was?
I found it.
Okay.
It was Peanut Butter Princess. And Peanut Butter Princess said, a tiny question about the air buffer. Probably don't want to use the same profile pictures on accounts, but I think that you kind of said that when you were describing the steps just now anyway, so...
She did,
that'll be something that like cleanly ties to accounts that might not have the same name or any other identifiers. It's just like, well, they're using the same profile pic, and it's not a common profile pic. Like mine is currently like a commission, so like not a lot of people using it.
Yeah, and also unless
like
someone comes
of
and
yourself, for example,
mints your commissioned profile picture on the blockchain.
That's true. I just NFTs.
What was I going to say? But the air gap doesn't have to be like I log in on this computer for my Sophie from Mars stuff, and I log in over there for my dark secret fetish account stuff. But like in terms of what you're describing here, where like what's accessible information for say a stalker, but if it were that you're doing stuff that you want to completely dissociate from your like legal identity or whatever, and because it's like radical activism stuff, then it would be better to do that kind of like physical separation.
If you're worried that the stalker in question is going to do hacking and do intrusions and try to put an implant on your machine, then maybe 2 separate machines could be advantageous to you. But if but for almost everybody, for almost everything, you don't really have to worry about that. And as we said, most of the stuff that we're trying to hide is safety stuff, not any sort of ideological thing. And so the amount of danger that you're preventing versus the amount of time you're saving, right? That's always going to be the equation that you're dealing with.
Yeah.
And you can never get rid of danger, you can only reduce it.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I feel like this was a good one. Good discussion.
Yeah. Done so much learning. Thanks for coming on, Tyr.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's shout you. Let's make sure we shout you out, because I want to make sure you definitely get promoted. And also,
yes.
chat.
Yes.
I know a lot of you have been saying throughout, oh, I'm gonna definitely rewatch this one because it's pretty information dense. The episode will be posted on my YouTube. You can always find it on my VODs section in my Twitch, but it's on my YouTube, so !YT. And my editor will also put up a few like clips from this. So if you're looking for a specific thing, that'll be out there for you.
True. Yeah. And I need to shout this out. We are working. I might have already told this story, but we're working on it being a podcast.
Yeah.
I use Anchor to upload podcasts. I've been doing it for my TTRPG, light, fun, queer, dice rolling, role playing podcast, Rolling with Rainbows. Check it out if you're interested in those kinds of things. Not radical at all. Just us chatting and rolling some dice and hanging out. I used Anchor to. Oh, I see. I used Anchor to try and upload the Red Planet podcast, and it has not gone through. We're investigating. Hopefully, it will be available as a podcast soon. We will see. I'm gonna try uploading everything again and never say communist or leftist or any of these words in any of the description, and see what happens. And wouldn't that be interesting if it changes things? So we'll see, chat. We'll see.
That's right.
Right.
But yeah, Tyr, tell us where we can find you and how we can support you.
You can find me on YouTube at Pamphleteer, the channel. Pamphleteer, like the word pamphlet with an E and an R at the end, or on Twitter at pamphlet_TYR, the tier you see in this chat right here. And you see it's a great pun, a play on words where tier sounds the same way in both versions. Anyway, I do great video essays on my YouTube channel that I'm very proud of and that take me a million years to put together.
Best video essays in the game.
Yeah. Sorry, you do the best video essays in the game. I do the
no, it's you.
0th best. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, of course.
You're the Sigma video essays.
That explains why I have so few subs. Excellent. I am. I just my most recent one that I'm very proud of put out last month is on how the discourse around religion just is and all of that, and y'all should check it out.
Is that the one, The Birth of Christianity? Let's talk about Tradcats. Yeah, I'm looking at it live.
That sounds good.
Every time I watch a tier video, my brain expands and gets thicker and juicier.
Your brain expands?
Yes, my brain. Yes, it's a test of my meaty brain. I spent a really long time going around all over the internet telling everybody to watch Tier's information dominance series. They're fucking incredible. And actually, you and your wife did a cute little thing that was inspired by a little thing that I did. That's something people could go check out. I did my non-binary coming out video, which was very Martian poem. It's like the Watchmen, right, with the different moments in time. And Tyr and Graham did that as well, and it was better than my one, and I'm very jealous. Okay.
Sweet. Well, yeah.
Muel, where can we find you though?
Oh God!
Right now.
Yeah, let's just do it right now. Let's do the sign-ups right now.
Okay. Well, yeah. As I said previously, I'm no longer a political streamer. I'm a speedrunner now. So that's that's the content you can expect from me if you come to find me on www.twitch.tv/DJ Muel. It's spelled exactly as it is underneath my head right here, DJ Muel, and you can find me on Twitter at DJMUEL_, and I'm also on YouTube, and you can just find me there with DJMU3L. So there you go. What about Sophie? Where can you find Sophie from Mars? Where can you find Sophie from Mars?
Sophie from Mars.
Sophie
That's
from
it.
Mars.
Just look it up.
Hey,
I did good
Google it.
SEO
Use the
this
hacker
time. I
skills. Use
This
the
is why I
hacker skills
rebranded.
you learned today, chat.
did.
And find Sophie from
Googling.
Mars. You'll be able to find her Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, Patreon.
Patreon's the important one, though. So
Patreon
find
is
that
the most
first.
important one.
Yeah,
Give
that's how
Sophie
you
your money.
Give me money. Yeah.
Yeah.
Giving Sophie money is based, and not giving Sophie money, that's cringe.
Quite cringe.
It's very cringe.
All right, everybody. See you next week.
Nailed it.
All right.
Absolutely nailed it.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya.
We shall not make excuses for the terror. Your consistent attacks on the life and livelihood of vulnerable members of our community has taught us and our allies to move in the shadows to remain invisible. And as you will soon find out, you cannot defeat an enemy that you cannot see.